The roar of engines echoed through the deserted street as a group of bikers surrounded a lone teenager walking home. Their taunts were loud, their intentions clear. This was going to be an easy scare. But the teen, he didn't flinch. His calm gaze pierced through the chaos, sending a ripple of confusion through the group. What they didn't know was that this quiet boy had been training in silence for years. Every insult, every shove, every moment of intimidation he'd faced in the past had forged him into something they couldn't see coming. As the leader of the pack stepped off his bike, towering over the teen with a smug grin, he uttered his first threat. What happened next would make the bikers question every decision that had led them to this moment. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the calm before the storm. Before we jump into today's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you love powerful stories of justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so you never miss what's coming next. Now, let's get started. On the surface, Elijah looked like an ordinary teenager. Quiet, reserved, and always walking alone, he didn't seem like the kind of person who could stand out, let alone fight back. He wasn't the tallest kid in the neighborhood, nor the loudest. To most people, he was invisible. But if anyone had taken the time to really watch him, they'd have seen something different. Every morning before sunrise, Elijah was up, shadowboxing in his room, perfecting every punch, every kick. In the evenings, he trained relentlessly at a rundown gym hidden behind an old auto shop. His coach, a retired MMA fighter, used to say, "Elijah, you've got the heart of a lion. The world just doesn't know it yet." Elijah didn't train to show off. He didn't train to hurt people. He trained because life had taught him one painful lesson. When you're underestimated, you need to be prepared for the moment they push too far. And tonight, that moment was about to arrive. But the bikers, they didn't know they'd just picked a fight with the wrong teenager. The trouble began when Elijah crossed paths with the bikers outside the local diner. They were loud, obnoxious, and looking for trouble. One of them, a burly man with a skull tattoo covering his arm, spotted Elijah walking by and smirked. "Hey, kid," he shouted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Where's your mommy?" "Out here, all alone, huh?" Elijah ignored them, keeping his head down and his steps steady. But the bikers weren't used to being ignored. The leader, a towering figure nicknamed Crusher, revved his engine and swerved his bike to block Elijah's path. "I'm talking to you, boy," Crusher growled, his tone laced with menace. The rest of the group circled around, their laughter cruel and taunting. One biker leaned close and sneered, "You think you're better than us, huh? Walking around here like you own the street?" Elijah glanced around. It wasn't the first time he'd been cornered, but this time felt different. There was no escape, no one around to intervene. The bikers were itching for a reaction, and they weren't going to let him walk away without one. "Come on, kid," Crusher said, stepping off his bike and cracking his knuckles. "Show us what you got." Elijah's heart raced, but his expression stayed calm. They thought they were in control. They thought he was defenseless. But what they didn't know was that Elijah had been preparing for this moment his entire life. And the storm they were about to face? It was only beginning. Crusher lunged forward, his massive frame looming over Elijah like a storm cloud. The other bikers cheered, expecting an easy show. But Elijah didn't move. Not yet. His eyes narrowed, his breathing steady. Every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. "Scared stiff, huh?" Crusher mocked, throwing a heavy punch aimed straight at Elijah's face. But in an instant, everything changed. Elijah sidestepped with precision, the punch grazing empty air, and with a fluid motion he delivered a sharp counterstrike to Crusher's ribs. The sound of impact was unmistakable. The laughter stopped. The bikers stared in stunned silence as Crusher stumbled back, clutching his side, his face a mix of shock and rage. "What the—" he began, but Elijah wasn't done. He adjusted his stance, every movement deliberate, every step calculated. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was years of training coming to life. Elijah had studied countless techniques, how to predict movements, exploit weaknesses, and stay 2 steps ahead. He didn't fight out of anger, he fought with precision and control. Another biker charged at him, swinging wildly, but Elijah dodged with ease, sweeping the man's legs out from under him. The group began to realize that this wasn't just some scared kid. They had underestimated someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Crusher, now red with fury, barked orders at the others. "Take him down," he roared. But as they advanced, Elijah's resolve only deepened. They had no idea that the teenager they thought they could intimidate was about to dismantle their arrogance, one move at a time. The bikers regrouped, their confidence shaken but not entirely gone. Crusher barked at the others. "He's just one kid. Surround him, now!" Engines roared and the circle around Elijah tightened, their predatory smirks giving way to nervous glances. Elijah's movements were deliberate, his eyes darting between each biker. He wasn't just reacting, he was calculating. Every shift in their stance, every flicker of hesitation, they all told him exactly what was coming. One biker lunged from behind, swinging a chain with deadly force. Elijah spun, grabbing the chain midair and yanking it free with a strength that stunned everyone watching. With one swift motion, he coiled the chain and tossed it aside like it was nothing. Crusher growled, "What's your deal, kid? Who taught you to fight like this?" But Elijah stayed silent, his calm demeanor only adding to their growing unease. The group's bravado cracked further when another biker charged, only to be swiftly disarmed and pinned to the ground in a move so quick it was almost a blur. "Who is this kid?" one of them muttered, his voice trembling. Now the fear was evident in their eyes. They began second-guessing every step forward, every aggressive gesture. But it wasn't just Elijah's skill that unnerved them. It was the look in his eyes. Controlled, focused, unshaken. Crusher, desperate to maintain control, snarled, "This ain't over. You've messed with the wrong crew, kid." But deep down, even he was starting to wonder if they had stepped into a fight they couldn't win. Little did they know, Elijah wasn't just fighting back, he was unraveling them, exposing their weaknesses one by one, and with each calculated move, he brought them closer to the moment they'd regret ever crossing his path. Crusher's frustration boiled over as he ripped off his leather jacket and stomped toward Elijah. "You think you're tough, kid? Let's see how tough you are when it's just you and me," he bellowed, trying to reassert control. The remaining bikers stepped back, forming a tense circle around the two. Their bravado was gone, replaced by a nervous curiosity. Could their leader succeed where they had failed? Elijah stood still, his breathing steady, his posture calm. But when Crusher threw his first punch, a powerful, bone-crushing swing, Elijah didn't just block it. He caught Crusher's wrist midair, twisting it with a precision that brought the towering man to his knees in a single, fluid motion. The crowd gasped. Crusher roared in pain, struggling to free himself, but Elijah didn't let go. Instead, he leaned in close and said, his voice low but commanding, "You pick on people because it makes you feel strong. But strength is knowing when not to fight." Elijah released him, and Crusher stumbled back, clutching his arm, his expression a mix of shock and humiliation. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, whispering to each other. But the moment that shattered their bravado completely came next. One of the bikers, still crouching from his earlier fall, muttered, "Wait, I've seen him before. That's Elijah Kane. He's the kid who took down state champions at that underground MMA tournament." The group froze. Elijah Kane, a name whispered with awe in the local fight circles. The kid who trained with pros, who moved like a veteran fighter despite his age. Crusher's bravado evaporated as the realization set in. "You're that kid?" he stammered, the fight drained from his voice. Elijah's calm gaze swept over the group. "Now you know who I am, and you'll remember this moment every time you think about hurting someone weaker than you." Silence hung in the air, thick with the weight of their collective shame. But the bikers weren't just humiliated. They were afraid. And as Elijah turned to leave, They knew they'd never forget the day they'd underestimated the wrong person. As Elijah walked away, the bikers stood frozen, their once cocky attitudes replaced by silent reflection. Crusher, still clutching his arm, lowered his gaze to the ground, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The group, stripped of their arrogance, exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with the same unspoken question. How had it come to this? For Elijah, there was no satisfaction in humiliating them. His victory wasn't about proving he was stronger, it was about showing them the cost of their actions. Every step he took away from the scene felt lighter, not because he had won, but because he had stood up for himself without losing who he was. By the time he disappeared into the night, the bikers were left with more than just bruises. They had been forced to confront the truth. Their power was built on intimidation, but it crumbled the moment they met someone who refused to be scared. The next day, whispers spread across the town. Stories of the lone teenager who had faced down a gang of bikers rippled through the streets, reaching ears far and wide. Some said he was a hero, others called him a lesson. But Elijah didn't care about the labels. He returned to his quiet life, training harder than ever, knowing he would always be ready to protect himself and others if needed. The real victory wasn't the fight itself, but the message left behind. Strength isn't about domination. True strength lies in resilience, in standing firm against injustice, and in choosing integrity over vengeance. And for those bikers, the memory of Elijah Kane was a constant reminder that no matter how big or tough you think you are, there's always someone out there who can teach you a lesson, one you'll never forget. Thank you for watching. Maya's story reminds us that standing up for what's right can create lasting change. Whether it's overcoming adversity or challenging injustice, your voice matters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts on the story. Let's keep this conversation going. And remember, sharing these stories helps spread the message of justice and fairness, one act of courage at a time. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today.